Hi, so welcome. My name is Phil Gatt, and I am the author of The Smooth Guide to Self-Knowledge, and I'm here today to have a conversation with Jo Sharp, who is one of the participants
Still
on
happening.
The Smooth Guide, and it's still happening for her. So, welcome, Jo.
Thank you, Phil. Welcome to you as well.
Thank you very much. And here we are at the Beacon Yoga Centre, such a lovely haven of peace
It is.
and knowledge.
It is. It's a great place to
Yeah.
be staying, and I'm here this week, and I had the enjoyment of listening to the final recording of the course this morning,
Yeah.
and I found that really yet another layer of understanding
Mm.
came through from that.
Mm.
And we've been talking about this relationship between, well, for me, it's all been about you presenting evidence of the self. That really is, for me, that's the conclusion I've come to about the course, that over life, lots of things have been happening, and now, with this Vedanta matrix, if you like,
Yeah.
you're presenting the matrix, and it's helping me to put all my experiences into a sort of a context and place them within this matrix, like things like understanding, the reality, or not the reality, but the fact of the body and how the body transports us through our life, and the fact of the various states that I go through in my life, and where they fit in the whole picture.
Yes. Beautiful.
So
Well put.
it's been, and as I've said to you, it's been a busy time listening to the course. I mean, when you make a commitment to do a course, there's always that trepidation. Am I going to have time to actually carry through with this and do this? Because most of us, particularly those of us who are interested in pursuing truth and understanding, we're busy people.
Of course.
Naturally, we're busy, and I certainly would have to say I'm busy, but yet this is such important knowledge in my life that I knew that I needed to find time somehow to grab the advantage of listening to what you've learnt while it's available. And so actually it's been great that you're saying now that we're going to have, I'm jumping around a bit.
That's
here,
okay. Jump.
Because
That's fine.
the fact that you've said that, okay, we've done the 12-week course, but now it's going to be available ongoing for us, because I really do feel I need to backtrack, and I need to go back to things that we've already covered and listen again and try again to grasp and understand, and just have another go at that.
Yeah.
So I think it's great
Wonderful.
to have it as a resource.
Yeah. That's the process in which the teaching was presented to me as well. I took time out from my usual and habitual busy life to go to India to study the Tattva Buddha. And as I may have said in one of the first classes or first online presentations, my teacher said to me, this is a real luxury that you have this time, 3 months, if that's what you have allowed, to not do the usual kinds of things. Here you are on a retreat setting, everything's laid on, you don't have to do anything that you would normally have to do, i.e. keep the house clean, do the cooking. You'll have to do your washing up. No one's going to do your clothes washing, but the usual responsibilities and obligations are not here. So make the best possible use of this time. You're not here to make friends. If you're going to make friends with anyone, it's make friends with yourself and find out who this self is that this teaching talks of. And so coming to or living in the West and being in the context of our usual obligations and responsibilities, if we're not sequestering ourselves away in a retreat setting, then taking time and having the the opportunity for devoting, maybe even just an hour a week. Most of the recordings were only 30 minutes or so to actually
True
listen.
enough. Yeah.
And then on listening to that, how much time do we actually spend in idle thought about nothing in particular? What Vedanta is really about is training the mind to think about all that I'm not, and then when I've thought about all that I'm not, to reflect upon who I am. And that can be done whilst washing up. That can be done whilst driving the car. That can be done whilst vacuuming.
Can.
Yeah.
To an extent. Just a question I
Yeah.
had from what you said.
Mm.
So when you went to India and did the 3-month
Yeah.
course,
Yes.
was that a beginning for you or an end for you? Like, was that like the beginning of your journey, or do you feel? Did you feel when you finished it that you'd actually concluded something?
So when I began the course, it was close to the beginning because I went in 2000 and the beginning of 2002, I think it was, and I'd only come to yoga in 1994. Most of that yoga journey from 94 to 2000 was focused on asana, pranayama, some aspects of more esoteric aspects of yoga. And it wasn't until 2001 that I met my teacher, who came to talk about chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita. I would say that when I went to that first lecture, that was the beginning of my exposure.
Was that here at the ashram?
I saw the flyer at the ashram in the yoga hall,
yeah.
But the actual talks were given at the Heathcote Centre.
Okay, yeah.
And the first lecture or the first talk was my first exposure to this knowledge, and that would have been, I think that was probably in about August or September of 2000, I think it was. And then, so that was the beginning, and then going to India in 2002 to really study in a gurukulam or traditional ashram setting. That was a continuation of the beginning. At the end of that 3 months, was it the end? It was the end of that course because Swamiji said, right, well, that's it now. Push off. Go wherever you need to. Yeah. I hung around for 3 more months with him.
Okay.
But was it the end? No, it wasn't the end. Like I was saying to you earlier, I think, whilst this is one of the paradoxes of self-knowledge, whilst the self and meditation as your true nature is immediate, effortless, spontaneous, it took me 20 years to actually realize that. It's a paradox. I think, well, not that I think. I'm pretty sure I have an unshaking. So I'm sure, because how could it be? How could it be?
Yeah.
Pretty sure. I'm sure I have an unshaking, unwavering conviction that who I am is not what I have.
I like that. I think that's what I like about this course.
It's simple.
Is that you're presenting in lots of different ways and from a lot of different angles evidence of what we are not.
Yes.
And we keep going over what we are not.
Yes.
And realising that.
Yes.
Because in realising that, we're only left with then one understanding.
Absolutely.
Which still only for me comes in glimpses. But it's when I really contemplate what I am not that it becomes stronger, that I get the stronger sense of... It's like there's nowhere else to turn,
There isn't.
There's nowhere else to turn.
There is. Couple of things. So, the Smooth Guide to Self-Knowledge was written in 2002 over a weekend. And, I wrote it, or it got written, and was largely as something which I had written, wasn't something that I went back to. It was there. and it was launched. It was launched here at the ashram with Lakshmi and Swamiji.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I didn't go back and read it again. And then, you know, here we are, 18 years later, roughly a year ago, the idea came, this is something to go back to.
To share.
To share. And to, not only to share, but for me to reflect upon. And when, you know, when the Tattva Bodha was first introduced to me from start to finish in Tiruvannamalai in India, the last class and the last part of the last class of that particular text is the student and or rather the teacher chanting the very first shloka verse again. So you go from start to finish and everything is explained, and that took 2-3 weeks.
Yep.
Daily classes, 2 classes per day.
So that's going through all of what
everything.
All of what I am not.
Yep.
The body,
and all of what this is.
Space.
Yep. And then the last class and the last part of the last class is to chant the first verse again, because what what the essence of the teaching is to say, okay, go back and revise it. We'll make the assumption that you haven't quite got it, so go back and revise it. So go back, go back, go back. The Tattva Bodha is enough to do the job. Of course it is. As my teacher said, this is a simple book about truth. Not a simple truth, the total, whole, irrefutable truth. But it's distilled, condensed into a very simple, flimsy, small book. But it's the same truth that all of the scriptures, all of the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, the Brahma Sutras talk of.
And the Vedanta. How does
That's
that
it.
fit?
It is the Vedanta.
That is the Vedanta.
Absolutely.
So I don't quite understand the relationship between the Vedanta or Advaita Vedanta that you say and the Tattva Bodha.
Okay, so
how's that?
Okay, so Advaita Vedanta is essentially the non-dual reality that is the reality, i.e., it's not subject to negation, and it exists through all periods of times, and it's not. It doesn't exclude anything. It's an all-inclusive, no conditions apply reality. That's Advaita Vedanta, and there is. It's not one. It's one without a second. There isn't a second thing.
So that's the unchanging ground.
That's the absolutely.
Right.
That's the substratum. Everything else is an apparition in the substratum. So that's Advaita Vedanta.
Okay.
The Upanishads.
What do you mean? That is as a statement is Advaita Vedanta.
Advaita means Advaita. Dvaita means dual or two. Advaita negates the dual, non-dual. Vedanta, Veda, knowledge. Anta, the end of or the culmination of that knowledge is to recognize the non-dual nature of reality.
Okay.
That's what Advaita Vedanta means.
Okay. But
then,
just so that a book of Vedanta where you go into studying what is the body made up of, what are the organs of action and all of that.
Yeah.
How, I mean, Advaita Vedanta is a statement. There's a book, there's a book of Vedanta. Or many books of Vedanta.
So whilst it's a reality, in order to get to that reality, there is a tradition, there is a teaching methodology and a pedagogy to arrive at that. As with Einstein in physics. E equals mc squared.
Oh, okay. So you're saying that is the fact.
Yes.
Now we'll go into how
it's a derivation.
That.
It's a derivation of a non-dual reality. Because if I just say to you it's a non-dual reality, it's like, no, it isn't. Yes, it is. I mean, we'll get nowhere. It's just like 5-year-olds arguing. Yeah. There is Santa Claus. No, there isn't. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it is a what's known as a darshana, which is a way which in English, it's a Sanskrit word. It's a vision So Advaita Vedanta is a darshana. It's a vision as to how we see ourselves and how we see the world. Being a vision, it's like, how do I arrive at that vision? And that's through a teaching tradition. Now, for the beginning student, as in any form of learning, we start with simple learning. So, if you wanted...
You've got to learn the language.
You've got to learn the language, exactly right. So,
yeah.
With a baby, you don't go introducing a baby or a toddler to Shakespeare or Milton or Chaucer. You teach them the ABC.
Right.
But then when they get to 16, 18, and they've learnt about English grammar and they've learnt about literature, then of course they can be exposed to artistic prose and poetry, and they can appreciate it. Same way with this knowledge, what has to happen is we have to start from where we're at. And often where we're at is, I am Phil.
Yeah, right.
I am this body.
Yeah.
I am depressed. I am a father. I am an environmental scientist. I am fed up with this.
Okay.
You start with that.
And you mentioned earlier today when we were talking about the qualifications.
Yes.
For self-realization.
Yes.
I'd like to come back to that.
Yeah, sure.
So, because I think that kind of connects with what we've just been saying.
That,
the question I asked you actually was, where does the Tattva Bodha fit into
exactly
Advaita Vedanta?
Yeah, exactly. So it's known as what's known as a prakarana, and what that means is a Sanskrit word which basically means it's a preparatory text, meaning it's what you would study before you would go to Upanishads, which are...
Hang on, the Tattva Bodha is what you would
preparatory, study? Yes, it's a preparatory text before you go to the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, or the Brahma Sutras,
or
which are massive.
Or the Book of Vedanta, or is
there
that
is no
not
such
really...
thing. There's no such thing as the Book of Vedanta.
Oh, I see. Okay, so that's...
There's no such thing. The term Advaita Vedanta is a term which describes...
It's an umbrella term.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, yeah.
It's an umbrella term which describes all of those teachings, all of those texts which reveal the non-dual reality of self.
Right, okay.
So there's no text, I'm studying the Advaita Vedanta.
Oh, okay. Right.
No, it doesn't exist. Oh. What exists are the prakarana, the preparatory texts, things like Tattva Bodha, Atma Bodha, and there are many others as well. And then what also exists are the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, the Brahma Sutras. Funnily enough, the first exposure I had was not to a prakarana. When Swamiji came in 2001, he was talking about the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2. That's what he came to teach. And so I went from an exposure to the Bhagavad Gita and then went back to start at the beginning. And we can do that, of course. We do that in life, We can watch TV and watch a program about quantum physics, and it's presented in such an informative and an entertaining way, that we enjoy it and we grasp it. But it doesn't make us a quantum physicist.
Right.
So you have to go, if you wanted to become a quantum physicist, you'd have to go back to school. You'd have to finish year 12 physics and then go to university and then go and do postgraduate study. But the exposure, maybe it was that moment when you watched Carl Sagan talk about quantum physics, you say, oh, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. That's what happened for me.
Okay.
That's what happened for me.
So that leads us to the qualifications for self-realization.
Yes.
Would you like to talk about what, just quickly, not quickly, but just covering what are those qualifications like? Because you and I were having the conversation earlier today about denial.
Yeah.
And about whether someone is actually open to, able to absorb or to see or to or wishing to actually venture into this understanding.
Yeah.
And, sometimes you might be talking to someone and you think, well, no, that person's just not interested, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm very interested.
Yeah.
But but it varies people's level of interest in
Absolutely.
knowing this knowledge about yourself.
Absolutely.
And you were saying to me that there are qualifications. So
Yeah.
this is once again goes back to this matrix that
Yeah.
there's actually things you can point to.
Yeah.
It's not sort of airy-fairy.
Yeah.
It's not an airy-fairy thing.
No.
It actually, there are there's things you can point to,
Yeah.
the evidence that actually
Yeah.
helps you to understand where you're at in the scheme of things and what your understanding is.
So when I think back to myself as a student, I came from the place of I'm sick and tired of the way my life is working out for me, and I'm sick and tired of me, and the idea of me. It's not working anymore, and there was no denial in that, because I tried everything and nothing had worked to any extent that it was satisfactory.
Yeah. So you weren't going along thinking I'm fine. You were going along thinking I'm not fine.
I'm going there thinking
there's no
I'm
denial,
Fucked.
So there's no denial in that.
No.
But
if people, and this is the thing, and the word that was used and is used by teachers is sincerity. The sincerity of the student. Is the student sincerely seeking, or are they just window shopping? And the teachers know the difference between a sincere student and an insincere student. So a person who comes just for a look, that's fine. They'll look and they'll walk past. But there are students, fewer and far between, who've had enough. And they've tried so much, they've had enough, and they're willing and open and receptive to learning. That, in essence, is the essence of the qualification. A willingness and an openness, and being fed up with how life was, and having a yearning for something different. There has to be something different. Surely this is not my lot. Surely it doesn't make sense to me. Prove, and then if someone says, you're right, it isn't your lot, it's like, okay, I'm prepared to listen. Your job, you prove it to me.
Right.
And I'll test it. And if you don't feel as a teacher the ability to be able to prove to me, I'm leaving you. And that's what was explained to me by my teacher when he started to teach me. He said, if there's anything that you disagree with, if there's anything that you doubt, challenge me.
And you must be able to do that.
You must be able to do it.
I mean, I have been on courses and things where you don't really feel comfortable bringing up a doubt. You feel maybe I'm being a bit silly bringing this up, but I think I really like the fact that you encourage us to actually voice our doubts.
Absolutely.
And have those doubts answered, and you might get an answer which I have from you.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, no, I sort of actually agree with that.
Yeah.
And for me, I absolutely will not accept anything until I absolutely accept it. Like, I have to actually connect with that truth in my experience, and then I can go, that I can tick that one, then I can carry on now, because that fits comfortably, or uncomfortably, but it fits. So so I think that's a really important, and that runs through this whole tradition, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
It's all about the student questioning, doubting, and truthing, like making sure that because otherwise you don't go forward. You don't move a step forward until you absolutely accept or.
So for any teaching scripture to qualify as Advaita Vedanta, it needs to lead the student or the person from the known, i.e. what they know about themselves, to the unknown, i.e. that which they don't know about themselves. They wouldn't ask a question if they knew everything. So they obviously don't know something, and it's leading someone from what they know to what they don't know. It has to be logically convincing. It has to convince your logic, yes, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it has to be backed up by your experience as well. When it meets those three criteria, that's Advaita Vedanta.
Right, okay.
And in order for that to be applied, of course, the student needs, the teacher doesn't need to, the teacher knows So the teacher doesn't need to ask any questions
Convince you.
and convince himself, because it's already done. But the questioning has to come from the student, and the answers, and then the questioning of the student comes from the teacher.
Right.
And so we had tests, secret tests, because no one wants to be embarrassed.
Right.
And so it's a beautiful, okay, so we're going to have a little secret test here. Don't answer out loud, because who wants, this is the reason why people are embarrassed to ask questions of a teacher of Advaita Vedanta, because by asking the question, it demonstrates
you're revealing yourself.
You're revealing your ignorance, and that's embarrassing for a lot of people. But at some point in time, it's like when you go to a doctor you've got a pain and it's in your private parts.
Yeah.
You don't say, "Well, I'm not showing you because I'm embarrassed." Show me what you got, and then I'll tell you this is the problem.
Yeah.
You have to overcome that fear.
Yeah.
You have to overcome that embarrassment. And the way my teacher did that, and the way I did it in this course, anonymous questions. I mean, not anonymous to me. I know who the questions come from, but then I don't reveal the questioner to the audience, because that's not nice.
But there's
and
still
not
a
necessary.
degree. There's still a degree. I mean, I experienced it through the course of thinking, "Oh God, I need to ask this question. So it's probably a bit dumb." I mean,
Yeah, and that's
what am I not getting here?
That's the conditioning.
But that's okay.
That's the conditioning.
I think if you, well, you're either comfortable to ask the question or you're not. But
so,
you need to be.
Yeah, and so it's like be childlike.
Yeah.
A child, unless it's had adverse experiences from asking questions, will ask all sorts of questions that can be really challenging and infuriating for the parent.
And to repeat the questions over and over, actually.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes, usually, once is not enough. Usually you need to hear it a few different ways before it actually connects.
Yeah. And what is a loving...
With experience in between.
A loving parent doesn't get frustrated that or withhold any love, or to offer anger because a child doesn't quite get it.
Yeah.
That's not going to help in learning.
No. So Phil, I guess we should wrap up this conversation. Yeah. It's been really great talking to you.
You too.
Yeah, we've obviously, it's been an enjoyable journey, but I'm not finishing yet. I'm going to keep going. I want to keep going over the material and keeping the journal happening, and hopefully, and as you've said, keep asking questions, and once a month you're going to publish the question and answer and keep that going.
Absolutely.
Part of it.
So what we're doing is we're going to hold the course open until the end of February, and the Beacon Yoga Centre is going to put out some media to invite others, friends of people who've done the course, family members and others beyond. The materials will be there. Yeah. And they can access those materials however they like, and it can continue until February.
They'll have the readings.
Yep.
They'll have the question and answers from the previous students.
Yeah. And
the meditations.
Yes.
And then following on from that, there'll be more publication on question and answers from the new students, which will be added on to the Q&As we've already done, because the questions will keep coming.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Great. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil.
Bye.
Okay.